I'm Natalie Mitchell, 32, and on the surface, living the dream with my tech company valued at over $200 million. Yet here I stood, staring at my name card placed at the farthest table at my sister Grace's wedding reception. 5 years of minimal contact, then this placement like a complete afterthought. Wait, are you Natalie Mitchell, that IT millionaire? Grace's fiancé, Brandon, asked as I sat quietly. My sister and parents became visibly pale watching his excitement. All right, time to decide what this family truly means to me. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever felt invisible to those who should value you most. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, my sister Grace and I were born just 2 years apart. I still remember the yellow bedroom we shared, with butterfly stickers on the ceiling and a bookshelf dividing our sides. Grace, being younger, would often crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. And I'd tell her stories about brave princesses who saved themselves. We were inseparable then, sharing toys, clothes, and our deepest secrets. Our parents, Diana and Robert Mitchell, ran a successful local insurance agency. Dad worked long hours while Mom managed the social calendar, always ensuring we presented the perfect family image to their country club friends. From early on, it became clear that Grace possessed qualities my parents valued: conventional beauty, social grace, and an eagerness to please. With her golden blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and naturally outgoing personality, she embodied everything they hoped for in a daughter. I was different, quieter, more analytical, with dark brown hair and a preference for books over parties. By middle school, the contrasts between us became more pronounced. While Grace joined cheerleading and made friends effortlessly, I gravitated toward the computer lab where I could build websites and program simple games. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became a refrain I heard so often it felt like background music to my adolescence. When Grace won Homecoming Queen, my parents threw a party. When I won the state science competition, they simply nodded and asked if I'd considered joining a sports team. High school only widened the divide. Grace was crowned prom queen and dated the football captain, while I served as president of the computer club and spent weekends building my first app. My parents attended every one of Grace's cheerleading competitions, but missed my technology showcase where I presented software that caught the attention of an MIT recruiter. When college acceptance letters arrived, I received a full scholarship to MIT for computer science. Rather than celebrating, my mother said, "Boston is so far away. At least Grace is staying close to home at Portland State." The day I left for college, my father's parting words were, "Don't get too caught up in all that computer stuff. You'll need to focus on finding a good husband, too." At MIT, I thrived. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who understood my passion for technology. The challenges were immense. Being one of few women in my program meant constant battles for respect. Male classmates assumed I needed help with coding assignments. Professors sometimes directed questions to the men around me, but I persisted, graduating with honors and multiple job offers. Instead of accepting corporate positions, I took a risk. In my tiny apartment, I developed security software that protected against a new type of cyber threat. Working 18-hour days, living on ramen and coffee, I created Secure Sync, a program that would eventually revolutionize data protection. My first major contract came unexpectedly. After a major bank experienced a devastating hack, they took a chance on my solution when larger companies failed them. The success was immediate. My software stopped threats their expensive systems missed. Within months, I had contracts with 3 more financial institutions. The next 5 years brought explosive growth. SecureSync expanded from just me to a team of 45 employees. We secured venture capital funding, moved into sleek offices in San Francisco, and our valuation soared past $200 million. Industry magazines featured me as a rising star and woman to watch in tech. The apartment became a modern condo overlooking the bay, Throughout this journey, my family remained distant. Christmas calls lasted barely 15 minutes. When I explained my company's success, my father would interrupt with, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Grace got promoted to head nurse?" Okay. My mother consistently referred to my career as playing with computers, even after Forbes mentioned me as an innovator. Our last family gathering happened 5 years ago when I visited Portland after securing our biggest contract yet. What I hoped would be a celebration turned into an argument when my mother criticized my unfeminine career choice and wondered aloud when I would settle down like Grace. When I defended my choices, my father accused me of thinking I was better than family. I left early and hadn't been back since. Communication dwindled to holiday texts and occasional social media comments. That's why the thick cream envelope that arrived at my office surprised me. Inside was an elegant invitation to Grace's wedding to Brandon Harris, son of a prominent local businessman. A handwritten note from Grace read, "Hope you can make it." It would mean a lot. Despite everything, hope flickered. Perhaps my success had finally earned their respect. Maybe this wedding could be a fresh start. After consulting my calendar with my assistant, I RSVP'd yes and arranged a weekend away from the company. I spent a small fortune on the perfect outfit, a tasteful emerald silk dress from a designer boutique, and selected a wedding gift of handcrafted baccarat crystal worth $15,000, perhaps materialistic. But I wanted them to know I had achieved something significant despite their lack of support. As my private flight approached Portland, I gazed at the familiar landscape of the Pacific Northwest and allowed myself to imagine a warm homecoming. Would they finally see me as I was, rather than who they wished I'd become? The flight attendant's voice pulled me from my thoughts as we prepared to land in Portland. Looking out the window, I watched the familiar green landscape come into view, so different from San Francisco's urban sprawl. A car service waited as I exited the terminal, my driver holding a sign with Ms. Mitchell in crisp black letters. "Where to, Miss Mitchell?" he asked, taking my weekend bag. "The Nines Hotel downtown," I replied, having decided against staying at my parents' house. Boundaries seemed necessary for my mental health. As we drove through the city, I found myself pointing out landmarks from my childhood. The library where I'd spent countless weekends. The ice cream shop where Grace and I celebrated report cards. The park where we'd chase each other around the playground. They remained unchanged, while everything else had shifted. Checking into my suite at the hotel, I placed my dress carefully in the closet and set the expensively wrapped wedding gift on the desk. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace, "Glad you could make it. Super busy with preparations, but see you at the house tomorrow." The brevity stung a little. 5 years apart, and that was all she had to say. I texted back a simple looking forward to it and ordered room service instead of venturing out. That night, I rehearsed calm responses to potential comments about my work, my appearance, my relationship status. Sleep came fitfully. The next morning, I took extra care with my appearance for the pre-wedding family gathering. My hair fell in perfect waves, my makeup subtle but flawless. The navy blue sundress I chose was sophisticated without being showy. After a final glance in the mirror, I called for the car and clutched the small bag containing thoughtful gifts. For my parents and Grace, the family home looked exactly as I remembered. Colonial style with white trim and my mother's immaculate garden surrounding the porch. Several cars already lined the driveway as I pulled up. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the door and knocked, feeling strangely like a visitor rather than family. My mother answered, her expression momentarily blank before recognition set in. "Natalie, you're here." Her hug felt stiff, perfunctory. "Come in. Everyone's in the backyard." She looked me up and down with a critical eye. "You look well. Have you lost weight? Your face seems thinner." Before I could respond, she continued, "Grace is with her bridesmaids. They've been such a help. With everything." Walking through the house felt like navigating a museum of a life I no longer belonged to. New family photos lined the walls. Grace's nursing school graduation, holidays, vacations. None, including me. It was as if I'd been carefully edited out of the family narrative. In the backyard, relatives clustered in conversation groups. My father stood by the grill, beer in hand, laughing with his brothers. When he saw me, he nodded without interrupting his conversation. Eventually, he made his way over. "There she is," he said, giving my shoulder a pat. The San Francisco big shot. Throughout the afternoon, the pattern continued. Relatives I hadn't seen in years asked surface-level questions without waiting for answers. An aunt commented on my lack of a wedding ring, still focused on career. I see. Such a shame. A cousin introduced me to his wife with, "This is Natalie. She does something with computers in California." Grace remained surrounded by a protective circle of bridesmaids. 8 women in matching Bride Squad t-shirts who laughed too loudly at inside jokes. When we finally spoke, her hug was quick, her attention divided. "You look great," I said. Meaning it, she glowed with pre-wedding excitement. "Thanks. It's been crazy busy. Mom's been a lifesaver with the planning." She introduced me to several bridesmaids whose names blurred together. Not one was familiar from our childhood. New friends I'd never heard mentioned. "You remember Lisa from nursing school and Kimberly from the hospital?" She didn't wait for my response. "Oh, I think Mom needs me for something." As she flitted away, I stood awkwardly at the edge of a conversation. Brandon, Grace's fiancé, approached with a friendly smile, tall with sandy hair and a confident manner. He extended his hand. "You must be Natalie. Grace mentioned you'd be coming from California." "Yes, San Francisco." "Congratulations on the wedding." "Thanks. What is it you do out there? Sales or something, right?" Before I could correct him, my mother called everyone for a group photo. "Just the immediate family," she announced, gesturing to Grace, my father, herself, and Brandon. When I stepped forward, she added, "Oh, and we need someone to take the picture. Natalie, would you mind?" The sting was sharp and immediate. I took the camera without comment, capturing their perfect family portrait while feeling distinctly placed on the outside. After several shots, I handed the camera back and made an excuse about getting a drink. Near the refreshment table, I overheard my mother speaking to an elderly relative. "Natalie's always been difficult, so independent. You know, Grace is our easy one, always thinking of family first." The words hit like a physical blow. I set down my untouched drink and found a quiet corner to text my friend Rachel back in San Francisco. "Remind me why I came." Her response was immediate. "It's 'cause you're stronger than they know. Text me updates. I'm here if you need an extraction." Plan. The gathering continued for another hour before I claimed an early flight the next morning as an excuse to leave. No one protested or asked me to stay longer. In the Uber back to my hotel, I finally allowed the tears I'd been fighting all afternoon. The driver kindly pretended not to notice, turning up the radio to give me privacy. Back in my hotel room, I kicked off my shoes and called Rachel. "That bad?" she asked after I recounted the afternoon. "Worse, it's like I don't exist except as an inconvenience. I'm not even in their family photos." "Their loss," Rachel said firmly. "Remember who you are. The woman who built something extraordinary from nothing. The one who never gave up." We hung up. I ordered a glass of wine from room service and stood looking out at the Portland skyline. Tomorrow would be the rehearsal dinner, then the wedding itself. I made a decision. I would get through this weekend with dignity. Not for them, but for myself. The rehearsal dinner was held at Riverside, one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular views of the Willamette River, and crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables dressed in white linen. I arrived precisely on time, wearing a burgundy cocktail dress that had earned compliments from the fashion editor of Vogue at a charity event last month. The hostess consulted her list. "Mitchell Party. Ah, yes. You'll be at table 7. She led me through the main dining area, past tables 1 through 6. each filling with family members and close friends, to a small table near the kitchen entrance. Table 7 held place cards for Mitchell's extended family. A distant elderly aunt, I barely remembered, to second cousins and their spouses, and me. "Can I get you something from the bar?" the hostess asked, perhaps noticing my expression. "Scotch, neat." "Make it a double," I replied, setting my clutch on the table. From this position, I could see the head table where Grace sat, surrounded by her 8 bridesmaids. Not one spot had been saved for her only sister. The bridesmaids were all similar versions of Grace, blonde, bubbly, dressed in pastels. They took selfies and laughed while comparing matching bracelets Grace had apparently given as gifts. I recognized none of them from our childhood or even from Grace's social media. Brandon's family dominated the central tables. His parents, James and Elizabeth Harris, holding court among Portland's business elite. James Harris had made a fortune in commercial real estate, and from the whispers around me, had paid for most of this lavish wedding weekend. My Aunt Dorothy found her seat beside me, peering through thick glasses. "Natalie, is that you? My, you've grown up." She patted my hand. "Still single, dear, and working all the time, I hear. Such a shame. Kay, a pretty girl like you should have a family by now." I sipped my scotch, which the server had delivered with impressive speed. "Actually, I'm quite happy with my life, Aunt Dorothy." She looked unconvinced. "You say so, dear? Your sister has done so well for herself, hasn't she? Such a lovely fiancé with such a good family. Your parents are thrilled." Across the room, I noticed my mother in animated conversation with Elizabeth Harris. Oh, Grace has always been so nurturing. Kate, even as a little girl, she would care for her. Dolls like real babies. That's why nursing was the perfect career for her. She's always put others first. Not once did I hear my mother mention my name or achievements throughout the evening, despite opportunities when guests asked about her children. During the cocktail hour, James Harris approached me, champagne in hand. "You're Grace's sister, correct? From California?" "Yes, San Francisco. I run a technology company there." "Is that so? Like social media or websites?" "My secretary's son does something with computers too." I smiled tightly. "Cybersecurity, actually. We develop enterprise-level protection systems for financial institutions and government agencies." His eyes glazed over. "Interesting hobby. So, what do you do for actual work?" Before I could respond, he was called away to greet another guest. I ordered a second scotch. Eventually, Grace made her way to my table. Looking radiant in a white cocktail dress with bride spelled in rhinestones on the shoulder. "You made it," she said, giving me a quick hug that barely made contact. "Wouldn't miss it. Everything looks beautiful." She glanced around distractedly. "Thanks. It's been so stressful planning everything." "Mom's been amazing, though." "I noticed I'm not seated with the family," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Grace had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Oh, that? Well, seating was complicated. With Brandon's large family. Should have told me if you wanted to be a bridesmaid." "I assumed with your busy work schedule." "You never asked," I pointed out quietly. "Well, it's all set now." "Oh, I see Brandon's grandmother just arrived. Should go say hello." She squeezed my arm. "Thanks for being here, sis." As she walked away, I felt a presence beside me. Brandon's best man, Tyler, leaned against a nearby pillar. "So you're the mysterious sister," he said, his tone slightly condescending. "Grace mentioned you live in California, teaching or something, right?" "I run a technology company," I corrected. Cool, like an Etsy shop." His smirk made it clear he wasn't really interested in the answer. "Something like that," I replied, unwilling to waste energy explaining. Dinner began with my father rising to give the first toast. Key beamed at Grace, raising his glass high. "To my perfect daughter, who has brought us nothing but joy from the day she was born. And to Brandon, the son we always wanted. We couldn't. Be prouder of the beautiful life you two are building together. Not a single mention of having another daughter. Not even a cursory acknowledgement of my existence. Each subsequent speech followed the same pattern. Grace was celebrated, her relationship with Brandon exalted, while I sat in the shadows at table 7, increasingly invisible. As dessert was being served, an older woman took the empty seat beside me. I recognized Elaine Peterson, my mother's friend from college, who had always treated me with unexpected kindness growing up. "I've been following your success, Natalie," she said without preamble. "That profile in Forbes was impressive. Your parents never mention it, you know?" "I'm not surprised," I replied, pushing my untouched cake away. "They've always been intimidated by you," Elaine said, lowering her voice. "Your intelligence, your drive. It's easier for them to focus on Grace. She makes them comfortable. How's the family circus? Need an emergency conference call to escape?" I smiled despite myself. "Tempting, we'll update tomorrow." After a long shower, I made my decision. I would stay not for their approval, but for my own closure. I'd spent too many years hoping for validation from people unwilling or unable to give it. This weekend would be the period at the end of that sentence, allowing me to begin a new chapter free from those expectations. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains as I awakened to the day of Grace's wedding. For a moment, I lay, still mentally preparing for what would likely be another day of subtle exclusion and emotional gymnastics. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. "Big day. Remember, you're the Natalie Mitchell who made cybersecurity world's 30 under 30. Not the Natalie who needs her family's approval. Call if you need perspective." Her message bolstered my resolve. I responded with a quick thanks before starting my morning routine. As I applied my makeup, I checked Instagram to see a flood of posts from Grace's bridesmaids. They were already at my parents' house, matching robes on, champagne flutes raised in various poses. Hashtag Bride Squad, hashtag Grace's Big Day, and hashtag Best Friends Forever. Captions accompanied each carefully filtered image. Not a single invitation had been extended to me to join them for the morning preparations. The realization settled heavy in my stomach. Not just excluded from the wedding party, but from the entire ritual of sisterhood that traditionally accompanied it. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. A hotel staff member delivered a stunning arrangement of white orchids. For a moment, my heart lifted, thinking perhaps my family had remembered me after all. But the card read simply, "Knock em dead, boss. We're all rooting for you here. Your secure sync team." My eyes stung with unexpected tears. My work family, those I'd built relationships with over the past 5 years, had thought to support me from afar. Meanwhile, my own mother hadn't even texted to check if I was awake or needed anything for the day. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone rang with my mother's name on the screen. "Natalie, are you up? The ceremony starts at 3 o'clock, but family needs to be at the church by 1 for photos." "Good morning to you, too, Mom. Yes, I'm awake. You're making an effort with your appearance, right? These will be permanent photos I've arranged for the churches. Cry room to be available if you want to change there." Her tone carried its familiar critical edge. "My hotel room is fine, thanks, and yes, I'll be presentable." I bit back the urge to mention that my appearance had been deemed worthy of a spread in Vanity Fair last year. "Good. And please don't be late. Grace is very stressed, and we don't need any complications." After she hung up, I finished getting ready, taking extra care with my hair and makeup. The emerald silk dress I'd chosen was elegant without being flashy. I had no intention of upstaging the bride, but refused to diminish myself either. The 4-carat diamond earrings I wore, a gift to myself after closing our biggest contract, would be my subtle reminder of what I'd accomplished on my own. At 11:30, I arrived at my parents' house. Cars lined the street and the sounds of laughter and music spilled from inside. The front door was unlocked, so I entered without knocking. The living room had been transformed into a bridal preparation zone. Makeup artists, hairstylists, and photographers moved among the bridesmaids, who were now dressed in matching lavender gowns. Grace sat in the center, a mimosa in hand, looking beautiful in a silk robe with bride embroidered across the back. No one noticed me for several minutes as I stood in the doorway, gift bag in hand. Finally, my mother emerged from the kitchen, stopping short when she saw me. "Natalie, you're early."
All right.
She glanced at my completed hair and makeup. "We have professionals here if you need touch-ups." "Fine, thanks." I brought something for Grace. Held up the bag containing a vintage sapphire hairpin I'd found at an antique shop in San Francisco. Something blue for the wedding tradition. "She's very busy right now with photos. Just leave it on the side table." My mother gestured dismissively before turning to the photographer. "Can we get some shots of Grace with her bridesmaids on the staircase?" I placed the gift on the table and found an unoccupied corner from which to observe. The scene was like watching a play where everyone knew their role except me. My father appeared briefly, freshly showered and dressed in his tuxedo pants and undershirt, grabbing a bottle of water before retreating to his den. He nodded in my direction but didn't approach. The bridesmaids formed a protective circle around Grace, touching up her makeup, adjusting her hair, filling her glass. Their conversations revolved around inside jokes and shared memories I wasn't part of. I heard one blonde bridesmaid say, "Remember that crazy weekend in Cabo last year?" Followed by conspiratorial laughter. Last year when I texted Grace on her birthday, I received a 2-word response 2 days later. Everybody gathered for the pre-ceremony prayer, my mother announced. Herding the bridal party into a circle in the center of the room, I moved to join them. But before I could step forward, the circle closed. Hands joined, heads bowed. I stood awkwardly outside the circle, invisible once again. The prayer included thanks for bringing Brandon into our family and blessings for Grace and Brandon's beautiful future together. My mother ended with, "We're so thankful for everyone who made the effort to be here for Grace's special day." As the circle broke, Grace spotted me for the first time. "Natalie, when did you get here?" She came over, careful not to wrinkle her robe. "About 20 minutes ago," I replied, hugging her gently. "You look beautiful, thanks." She looked around, nervously. "Everything's been so chaotic." "Did Mom tell you about the photo schedule? It's just that family should be at the church by 1. Grace nodded, then lowered her voice. "Can I ask you something?" It's awkward, but she bit her lip. "Brandon and I were hoping to upgrade our honeymoon, but with the wedding costs, ... double quotes, I know your company is doing well." The request landed like a slap. After 5 years of minimal contact, after being excluded from the bridal party and preparations, my sister's first private conversation with me was to ask for money. I maintained my composure. "What did you have in mind?" "We were thinking of extending to 2 weeks and adding Bora Bora, probably around $30,000. Her expression was hopeful, expectant. "I'll transfer it this afternoon," I heard myself say, wondering why I still sought approval through financial means. "You're the best." She hugged me quickly. "I should get back to the girls. We have this whole photo sequence planned before we leave for the church." I nodded, watching her return to her bridal circle. A memory surfaced of us as children playing wedding in the backyard. I was 7, Grace 5. We had taken turns being the bride, using a white sheet as a veil. "When I get married for real," little Grace had declared, "you'll be right next to me the whole day." 25 years later, I couldn't have been more separate from her experience if I'd watched it on television. I arrived at the church early, hoping to find a way to be useful. The colonial-style building was decorated with lavender and white. Flowers, ribbons adorning each pew. A coordinator with a clipboard intercepted me in the foyer. "Are you with the bride or groom?" "Bride, I'm her sister." She consulted her list. "Mitchell, O family. The family room is down the hall to the right, but I think they're still doing bride and bridesmaid photos in there. Is there anything?" I can help with," I offered. The coordinator smiled politely. "Everything's handled, thanks. The wedding planner has a team of 6 managing all details." With nowhere to go and nothing to do, I found a quiet corner in the church library and pulled out my phone. Work emails provided a welcome distraction, a security issue in our London office, a potential new client in Singapore, a question about our upcoming product launch. These problems I could solve. These relationships made sense. For 45 minutes, I immersed myself in work until the coordinator appeared again. "We're seating family now for the ceremony, if you'd like to follow me." I put away my phone and followed her into the sanctuary, expecting to be directed to the front rows reserved for immediate family. Instead, she led me to the 8th row from the front. "This is for immediate family," I said, confused. "I have you listed in row 8, she replied, checking her clipboard again. "The first 4 rows are for parents, grandparents, and Brandons. Extended family. Rows 5 through 7 are for the bridal party's families." And then suddenly, the wedding march began. All rose as the doors opened. My father appeared with Grace on his arm, her white gown cascading behind her, veil framing her radiant face. For a moment, all the hurt fell away as I remembered the little sister who had crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. She looked truly happy, and despite everything that mattered to me. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Brandon's voice broke with emotion during his vows. Grace's smile never wavered. When they were pronounced husband and wife, genuine applause filled the church. I joined in, clapping for my sister's happiness while acknowledging the ache in my chest. As guests began filing out toward the reception, I checked the wedding program I'd been handed upon arrival. A full page thanked the wedding party, parents, grandparents, and even the family dog for their love and support. My name appeared nowhere in the glossy booklet. The reception venue was a stunning country club overlooking the Columbia River. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and floor 2 ceiling windows showcased the water view. White roses and lavender hydrangeas adorned every surface, complemented by flickering candles in silver holders. A string quartet played softly in the corner of the grand ballroom while waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. At least 200 guests mingled in cocktail attire, many familiar faces from my childhood now matured with time. Near the bar, I spotted my father's business associates. By the windows, my mother's garden club friends clustered, admiring the view. Everyone seemed to belong except me. The seating chart was displayed on an ornate mirror near the entrance. Guests crowded around, finding their assignments. I waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. My finger traced down the alphabetical list. Mitchell, Diana, and Robert at table 1, the head table. Mitchell, Grace, and Brandon also at table 1, naturally. I continued scanning until finally locating Mitchell. Natalie at table 19. Following the numbered tables, I walked past the center of the room. Past the dance floor, past tables filled with extended family, past college friends, work colleagues, and neighbors until I reached table 19 in the far corner of the ballroom. Partially obscured by a decorative pillar and closest to the kitchen doors, my table companions were already seated. Aunt Dorothy from the rehearsal dinner, her hard-of-hearing husband, Uncle Walter, 2 elderly cousins of my grandmother whom I'd met perhaps once before, and 3 single people approximately my age who turned out to be former classmates of Grace, whom she felt bad not inviting. The table was so far removed from the main action that we could barely see the head table. Quite a shindig. Uncle Walter practically shouted, his hearing aid whistling slightly. Reminds me of my cousin Mabel's wedding back in '62, though that was in a VFW hall. I nodded politely, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. The distance from the main tables felt pointed, intentional, a physical manifestation of my place in the family hierarchy. Dinner was served with military precision: salad, soup, palate cleanser, entree. I made appropriate conversation with my table mates, answering the inevitable questions about my job and life in San Francisco with practiced brevity. No one at table 19 seemed particularly interested in technology or startups. So I asked about their lives instead, grateful for the distraction. As the entrees were being cleared, a movement caught my eye. Brandon, the groom himself, was making his way toward our table. He stopped to chat with guests at several tables along the way, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. When he finally reached table 19, he looked slightly flushed from champagne, but genuinely happy. I wanted to make sure I greeted everyone, he explained, shaking hands with Uncle Walter and nodding to the others. When he reached me, he extended his hand with a warm smile. Thank you for coming. Grace mentioned you flew in from California. San Francisco. Yes. Congratulations on the beautiful wedding. Thanks. What do you do out there? Grace hasn't told me much about you, I'm afraid. The comment stung, but I kept my expression neutral. I run a cybersecurity company called Secure Sync. We develop protection systems for financial institutions and government agencies. Brandon's eyes widened slightly. Wait, Secure Sync? The one that stopped the central bank attack last year? I nodded, surprised by his recognition. Hold on, he said, his expression changing from polite interest to genuine excitement. Are you Natalie Mitchell? That Natalie Mitchell, the IT millionaire who was in Forbes? The table fell silent. From the corner of my eye, I could see my parents and Grace at the head table, suddenly alert to the animated conversation happening at the forgotten table. 19, I am. I admitted quietly. Brandon's face lit up. This is incredible. I just finished reading that case study about your security protocol in my MBA program. Your predictive threat identification algorithm is revolutionary. I can't believe Grace never mentioned her sister is the Natalie Mitchell. By now, several guests at nearby tables had turned to listen. I noticed my mother whispering urgently to my father, both looking alarmed. Grace was half rising from her seat, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. You've created one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Brandon continued, oblivious to the attention. Didn't you just secure that contract with the Federal Reserve? That's got to be worth hundreds of millions. Before I could respond, my parents and Grace materialized beside our table. My mother's smile looked painfully forced. Brandon, darling, they're about to serve the cake. We should get ready for the cutting ceremony, she said, placing a hand on his arm. Did you know about Natalie's company? Brandon asked them, still enthusiastic. I've been studying her business model in my entrepreneurship class. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. Of course, we know about Natalie's computer business. Computer business, Brandon laughed. She's revolutionizing the entire cybersecurity industry. My professor says she'll be a billionaire within 5 years if the company keeps its current growth trajectory. Grace's expression shifted from concern to calculation so quickly I almost missed it. She linked her arm through mine in a show of sudden sisterly affection. We're so proud of Natalie, she said, as if we'd been close all along. I can't believe she's come all this way for our special day, as busy as she is. My mother jumped in, her social graces taking over. We should introduce you to some of our other guests, Natalie. James Harris was just asking about you. Brandon's father, who had dismissed me at the rehearsal dinner, was now making his way toward our table, champagne glass in hand. Natalie, I didn't realize you were the founder of Secure Sync. We should talk. I have some business associates who would be very interested in meeting you. Within minutes. My exile at table 19 was forgotten as I found myself surrounded by suddenly interested relatives and friends of the family. My mother guided me from group to group, her arm linked through mine as if we'd always been the closest of confidants, says my daughter Natalie. She introduced me repeatedly. The entrepreneur I was telling you about caught her eye during one such introduction. Funny, I don't recall you mentioning my company before today. She laughed, as if I'd made a joke, squeezing my arm with uncomfortable pressure. As we approached the Harris family, my father joined us, his hand on my shoulder. Always knew she had a good head for business, he told Brandon's father. Gets that from my side of the family. The transformation was so dramatic, it would have been comical if it weren't so painful. For years, my achievements had been downplayed, ignored, or dismissed. Now, suddenly, I was the golden child to be paraded before wedding guests who might be useful connections. Grace pulled me aside during a brief lull, her smile tight. Why didn't you tell me your company had gotten so big? I knew you were doing well, but not Forbes level well. You never asked, I replied simply. Not once in 5 years. She had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before her expression brightened. Listen, they're about to call for speeches. Would you mind saying a few words? Maybe mention secure? Sync. Brandon's family has tons of connections in the business world. And there it was. It's a real reason for the sudden interest. Not pride in my accomplishments or regret for years of exclusion, but an opportunity to leverage my success for their benefit. Something shifted inside me, a final thread breaking. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to collect my thoughts. In the elegant powder room, I stared at my reflection, the successful woman I'd become. Despite, not because of my family's support, the realization was simultaneously painful and freeing. Natalie, perfect timing. I was just telling Howard and Richard about your company. Howard's firm manages several pension funds that might be interested in your security protocols. How fascinating, I replied with a polite smile. If they'd like to learn more, they can contact our business development team through our website. We have a thorough vetting process for potential clients. His expression faltered slightly at my professional rather than eager response. Before he could recover, my mother appeared at my elbow. There you are. Several people have been asking about you. Did you know Elizabeth's brother is a venture capitalist? He's very interested in speaking with you. Mom, I said quietly but firmly, can we speak privately for a moment? You too, Dad, I added, seeing him hovering nearby. Something in my tone must have registered because they both followed me to a relatively quiet corner near the terrace. Grace, noticing the movement, quickly joined us. Is everything okay? She asked, glancing nervously toward the guests. They'll be serving cake soon. Everything's fine, I assured her. I just wanted a moment with my family. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice level and calm. For 5 years, we've barely spoken. My calls went unreturned, my achievements unacknowledged. I was seated at the furthest table today, not included in family photos and not even mentioned in the wedding program. My mother began to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I understand now that I don't fit into the narrative you've created about our family, and that's okay. But what's not okay is suddenly parading me around like a prized show dog because Brandon recognized my name. That's not fair, my father protested. We've always supported you. I asked simply, when did you support my career, my choices, or my life in any meaningful way? We've been concerned about you, my mother said, her voice taking on a familiar defensive tone. Working all the time, no social life, no family of your own. That's not healthy, Natalie. That's not concern, Mom. That's judgment. There's a difference. Grace shifted uncomfortably. Can we talk about this another time? It's my wedding day. That's exactly my point, I replied. It is your wedding day, and I'm happy for you. But I won't pretend that we're a close-knit family when we're not, or that my value only comes from who I know or what I've achieved. So, what are you saying? My father demanded. I'm saying that I'm going to quietly leave the reception now. I'll send a gift to celebrate your marriage, Grace, because I do wish you happiness, but I need to step away from this dynamic. I deserve relationships built on genuine care, not convenience or utility. You're just going to leave. Make a scene. My mother's voice rose slightly. No scene, I promised. I'll simply make my excuses and go. Most people won't even notice I'm gone, just as they didn't notice I was seated at the furthest table or excluded from the family photos. Grace's expression showed the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her all weekend, a mix of guilt and realization. Natalie, I didn't mean to, I know you didn't, I said gently. None of you did. That's actually the problem. It was all so automatic, so ingrained that you didn't even question it. I straightened my shoulders. I've built a life I'm proud of. I have people who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. I deserve that for my family too. And if I can't have it, then I need to accept that and stop hoping for it to change. The DJ announced that cake cutting was about to begin, creating a natural end to our conversation. As guests moved toward the center of the room, I took this opportunity to step onto the terrace for a final moment of privacy. To my surprise, Brandon appeared beside me. Everything okay? You looked intense talking with the family. It's just clearing the air, I replied. Congratulations again on your marriage. He studied my face. I feel like I'm missing something here. Grace never really talks about you, but when she does, it's always with this weird competitive edge. I assumed you two had the normal sister rivalry thing, but after meeting you, it seems more complicated. Family usually is, I said with a small smile. Well, for what it's worth, I think what you've built is incredible. And I'm sorry if I caused any awkwardness by bringing it up. You didn't know, and honestly, it helped me see things more clearly. As we turned to go back inside, Brandon asked, will you be staying for the send-off? No, I said. Think it's best if I make an early exit. Do you mind letting Grace know? I said goodbye. Sure, he agreed, looking confused but respectful. Safe travels back to San Francisco. Inside, I retrieved my purse from table 19, saying polite goodbyes to my table mates. Uncle Walter's parting words stayed with me. Always been a smart one. You're too smart for some to handle, I reckon. As I moved toward the exit, several guests stopped me. Some genuinely interested in catching up, others clearly hoping to make business connections. I was polite but brief with each interaction. Near the door, Elizabeth Harris, Brandon's mother, intercepted me. Leaving so soon? James was hoping to introduce you to some of his golf club friends. Please give James my regards, but I have an early flight tomorrow. She lowered her voice. Between us, we should set up lunch when things settle down. Your mother mentioned you're single, and my nephew Thomas is recently divorced. Very successful in finance. I smiled politely. Not actually looking for setups right now, but thank you. At the coat check, I encountered Elaine, my mother's friend, who had spoken honestly with me at the rehearsal dinner. Heading out? She asked, studying my expression. Yes, it's been an illuminating weekend. I saw the family huddle earlier. You stood your ground. I nodded. She smiled approvingly. Good for you. Some people never learn to do that with family. Takes courage or exhaustion. I replied with a small laugh. That too. She handed me a business card. I'm in San Francisco occasionally for art exhibitions. Would love to have coffee sometime with no Mitchell family drama attached. I tucked the card into my purse, touched by the gesture. A few other guests offered similar connections as I made my way out, people who seemed to see me as an individual, rather than an extension of my family role. In the quiet of my waiting car, I called Rachel. Mission accomplished. Mission aborted, actually, I replied, feeling lighter than I had all weekend. I'm heading back to the hotel. Early flight tomorrow. That bad? Actually, that good, I said, watching the lights of the country club recede in the distance. I finally stopped trying to be part of a narrative that doesn't have room for the real me. About damn time, Rachel said with approval. I'll have champagne waiting when you land tomorrow. As we drove through the Portland night, I felt a curious mix of sadness and liberation. The family I had longed to be accepted by might never truly see me. But for the first time, I fully saw myself, and that was ultimately worth much more. The plane touched down at San Francisco International Airport under clear blue skies. As we taxied to the gate, I powered up my phone to find 17 text messages and 5 missed calls. 3 from Grace, 2 from my mother, and none from my father. I scrolled through them quickly. Where did you go, Grace? People were asking about you, Mother. Call me when you get this, Mother. Brandon's father wanted to discuss. A potential investment, Mother? Did something happen? Brandon said. You seemed upset, Grace. I put the phone away without responding. The pattern was clear. Concern not for my feelings, but for the missed networking opportunities and social awkwardness my departure might have caused. Rachel waited beyond security, true to her word, with a small cooler bag. Champagne, as promised, though we might want to wait until we're at your place to pop it. The familiar drive along the bay to my condo provided time to decompress, sharing the weekend's events with someone who actually listened. Rachel's indignation on my behalf felt like a bomb. So basically, they ignored you until they realized you might be useful. She summarized as we entered my building. Pretty much. The speed with which I transformed from embarrassing relative to prized connection was almost impressive. My condo welcomed me back with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the San Francisco skyline. After the emotional marathon of the weekend, the clean lines and uncluttered space felt like sanctuary. To setting boundaries, Rachel toasted once we'd opened the champagne, and to chosen family, I added clinking glasses. The next morning, I threw myself back into work. My team at her calm office had been a safe space during the most stressful periods of building Secure Sync. You set a boundary, she noted after I recounted the wedding experience. How does that feel? Sad, I admitted, but also right. Like removing a splinter. It hurts, but it needed to happen. Grief and relief often coexist, she observed. You're grieving the family relationship you wished for while feeling relief at releasing the expectation. Over the next week, the messages from my family continued, evolving from confusion to irritation to sudden interest in my work. My mother's latest text read, James Harris mentioned their company might need security consulting. Should I give him your number? After careful consideration, I finally responded with a simple message. Please direct any business inquiries to our company website. I'm taking some personal time to reassess our family relationship. I'll reach out when I'm ready. My mother's response was immediate and predictable. Don't be dramatic, Natalie. This is how families are. Not all families, I whispered to my empty living room. Not anymore. The following weekend, Samantha invited the leadership team to her home for dinner. A gathering that evolved into an impromptu family by choice celebration with laughter, inside jokes, and genuine interest in each other's lives beyond work. Looking around the table, I realized I'd built more than a company. I'd created a community where I was valued for exactly who I was. 10 days after the wedding, Grace finally called instead of texting. I let it go to voicemail, then listened later. Natalie, it's me. Look, I don't understand what happened at the wedding. You've always been so independent, doing your own thing. I didn't think you'd care about being a bridesmaid or sitting at the family table. But Brandon says we might have taken you for granted. Anyway, call me back, okay? It was the first hint of self-awareness I'd heard from her in years. After sleeping on it, I called her the next morning. Natalie, you called back. She sounded genuinely surprised. I did. How was the honeymoon? Amazing. Thank you again for, helping with that. She paused awkwardly about the wedding. Grace, I interrupted gently. When was the last time you asked me about my life? Not my company or my money, but me. The silence stretched for several seconds. I don't know. Things got so busy with nursing and then meeting Brandon. 5 years, Grace. 5 years of minimal contact. And then I'm seated at the furthest table at your wedding until your husband realizes I might be useful to know. That's not fair, she protested, but with less conviction than I expected. Isn't it? Be honest with yourself, if not with me. Another long pause. I've always felt like I couldn't measure up to you, she finally admitted, her voice small. You were always the smart one, the one with the perfect grades and big ideas. I was. Just ordinary. That's not how I remember it, I replied. From my perspective, you were the golden child. The pretty one, the social one, the one mom and dad proudly introduced to everyone while I was the awkward disappointment. Really? The genuine surprise in her voice spoke volumes about our parallel but disconnected experiences. Really? And maybe that's the problem. We've been competing in a race neither of us designed, each thinking the other had the advantage. We talked for nearly an hour, the first real conversation we'd had in years. No earth-shattering revelations or tearful reconciliations, but perhaps the beginning of something more authentic. My parents proved more resistant to change. When I finally took their call, my father launched immediately into talk about our friends. Son who worked at a venture capital firm while my mother criticized my sensitivity about the wedding seating. We're family, Natalie. Family forgives and moves forward, she insisted. I agree, I replied. But moving forward requires acknowledgement and change, not just pretending problems don't exist. Well, I don't know what you expect from us. We've always supported you. Rather than argue, I simply said, I need some time and space to figure out what kind of relationship works for all of us. I love you, but I need to love myself enough to have boundaries too. They didn't understand. Perhaps they never would. But I no longer needed their understanding to validate my decision. Over the next several months, I poured energy into creating my foundation, supporting women in technology. Working with young women who faced barriers in STEM fields reconnected. Me with my own early passion for technology before it became entangled with proving my worth. My family and I established a careful dance, holiday calls, occasional text exchanges, always carefully skirting deeper issues. It wasn't ideal, but it was honest. I no longer pretended we had a relationship we didn't, and I protected myself from expectations that would only lead to disappointment. 6 months after the wedding, Grace visited San Francisco for a nursing conference. We met for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the bay, both slightly nervous. Your place is amazing, she said. After I'd given her a tour of my condo, I had no idea. I knew you were successful, but seeing it is different. It's just stuff, I replied. The company matters to me because it solves real problems, not because of the lifestyle. She nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about our family dynamics. Brandon says his family has similar patterns, just different versions. Most families do. I think the question is whether we recognize and change them or just perpetuate them. I don't want to be like Mom, she admitted suddenly. Always comparing, always judging. Brandon and I are talking about starting a family soon, and I keep worrying I'll do the same thing to my kids. The fact that you're worried about it, probably, means you won't, I offered. Awareness is the first step. We weren't best friends overnight, but something had shifted. The pretense had fallen away, allowing for the possibility of something more real to grow in its place. For my parents, our relationship remained more distant, conducted largely through holiday calls and occasional visits where we carefully avoided any topics of substance. It wasn't the warm family bond I'd once yearned for, but I'd made peace with that. Some relationships worked better with healthy distance. The true transformation happened within me. The little girl who had desperately sought approval finally understood that external validation would never fill an internal void. The success I'd built meant something because it aligned with my values and purpose, not because it impressed others. My therapist had asked once, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to earn your family's approval? The answer had emerged gradually. It looked like authentic connections, like work that mattered, like the freedom to define success on my own terms, like boundaries that protected my well-being. Like chosen family who celebrated rather than diminished my strengths. It looked, in other words, exactly like the life I was now living. Standing on my balcony one evening, watching the sun set over the Golden Gate Bridge, I felt a profound sense of homecoming, not to a place, but to myself. The journey from Table 19 to self-acceptance had been painful but necessary, teaching me that sometimes the greatest act of love is releasing expectations of those who cannot meet them. This wasn't the end of my family's story, merely the beginning of a new chapter where I held the pen, where I wrote my own definition of success and belonging, where I finally understood that taking my rightful seat at the table, any table, began with believing I deserved to be there. Have you ever felt like an afterthought to your family? How did you navigate those feelings and set boundaries? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is as important as the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always know your true worth is never determined by where others place you.